Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Forward Progress with Paulo Salgueiro Jr. Today we are in Warwick, Rhode Island at On the Ropes Boxing and Fitness, here with no other than four-time world champion, Jaime Clampitt-Hayes.
Hi.
Jaime, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
Good.
First and foremost, thank you for coming on the show. It's This is like a little fanboy moment for me, I'm not gonna lie, but still, nonetheless. So our show, as our viewers know, we talk about forward progress, lessons learned through sports, and we'll talk about your passion, how it all started, and kind of what boxing taught you throughout the years. So for some of our viewers, let's just start off. I know you've been involved in sports growing up, different sports, and then into boxing. But tell us a little bit about how your boxing journey began and kind of paint the picture for us, how everything was in the beginning for you.
Okay, so I started boxing, I think it was 1992. I was 15, and I was a gymnast. I started out gymnastics, like figure skating, and I had an injury, so I stopped doing gymnastics for a while and just kind of was looking for something, you know, something different. And this is like crazy, but it was the first thing that came up in the phone book. I was flipping through the phone book and I'm like, boxing, that's what I'm gonna do. So my dad took me to a boxing gym, and at the time they actually didn't let females even go into the gym. You had to wait downstairs for your son or whoever. So I was able to go in. I did the entire workout the first day, which was very challenging, and I just like fell in love with it. And at that time, I'm from Canada, so a woman in Ontario had just taken the Amateur Boxing Association to court to let females participate in boxing. And so I didn't really even know any of this until, after I started boxing, but that was the only reason that I was actually allowed to start, because of this woman.
So from the beginning, were your parents pretty supportive of getting into boxing, or was it like, are you sure you want to do boxing, or what was that like?
So my dad he played professional hockey, so he definitely was cool with it, and he started training with me in the beginning. I don't think they really got it, especially after the first time, I just like fell in love with it, and I don't think they really understood why I wanted to do it, but just feeling that empowerment that I felt after my first training session, I was just hooked and I just wanted more. And I think as they saw what it was doing for me, the confidence I was getting, and obviously getting in really good shape, I think they kind of started to understand.
What was it like your first time walking through that gym? Were you like intimidated, or were you still had like that competitor in you, like it didn't really matter? What was that like?
I think I was definitely nervous. I'm glad my dad came with me and worked out with me. But I think I was nervous. I didn't really know a lot about boxing. It was a complete fluke that I was there. I have to say, my very first coach, he had never trained a female, and he was very welcoming to me. So that, helped out a lot. A lot of the guys that were in the gym, they didn't want me there. Once I started and signed up and was coming all the time, some of the guys actually quit and went to another gym because they didn't want to train with a female.
Well, why? Why? What do you think was the reason? What's the?
I don't know.
I don't know. Back then, what's the big deal?
I think just because it was different, and they never had that experience, and it was definitely like a boys' club, and here I come. I'm 15. I wasn't good when I started. I had a lot of heart and desire, but I did not have the technique, and I didn't really understand boxing. So I think that kind of pushed some of the guys out of the gym.
So you start training, and how long you train for before you finally get an amateur fight? Kind of what was that progression like for you?
So it was really soon. I think I trained for 2 months, which I would never do that. But again, at that time, there weren't any females. So there was one other female in Saskatchewan that had registered. And so they're like, you're a girl, you guys can, box each other. We weren't in the same weight class. I got my butt kicked really bad. She was a hockey player and kind of a tough girl, and kind of a tomboy, and I wasn't. So it was, it was really hard, and I think it was hard for my parents because I got beat up. And but I think I fought on a Sunday. I actually still have the card from my first fight. And I went back to the gym on a Monday the next day, and they were like, okay, this girl's nuts. Like, she really wants it. And then I don't think I had another fight for like 6 months after that.
When you first started, like sparring and everything like that, what was it like for you, like getting like your first punch, like in the head or punch in the face? What was that like?
Yeah.
Like, what went through it, like, because I feel like there's either right, like we always talk about like the fight or flight response.
Yeah.
Like, what was going on mentally? Where it's like, all right, here we go, or what
Yeah.
was that like?
Well, the first, so when I was training for my very first fight, I sparred with this guy. I still remember his name was Vic, and he was a school teacher, and he was one of the only guys that were really nice to me in the gym, and he was trying to help me, but he really wouldn't hit me. So I got in the ring with this woman or girl that I fought, and I'd never really been hit hard before, and she pounded me. So I think that was like, I think I was just in shock because I didn't really know what to do. But then, after that, and of course, like my coach had never coached a female, he didn't know. So after that, they're like, okay, now you have to really start sparring. And I think it was hard in the beginning because I'd never really been hit before. But I think I just loved, I just loved like learning how not to get hit and coming back. And it, for some reason, it just made me feel really strong, and I just love that part of the sport. Did
you fall in love with boxing from the very beginning, or did it grow to love it? Kind of, what was that like?
It was like day one.
Day one.
It was like love at first sight.
The minute you realized, like, oh, I love this stuff.
Yeah, like day one. I remember training, and my first gym was in this old warehouse, and it was huge. And we used to do this warm up, and the coach would make us run for like 45 minutes, and we'd run punching out. We'd do all these crazy exercises. And I was like, it was really challenging. I was pretty tired, but I was just, I don't know, like, I just loved it. Like, I'm like, this is great. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Like, I just really knew from day one,
Really cool.
Yeah.
And you were amateur for several years, right, before becoming pro?
Yep.
And so you were one of the first registered, right,
I was
Canada?
the second in Canada registered,
Canada, right?
Yep.
And what was that transition like from amateur to pro in terms of, I guess, both training-wise and talent-wise? What was that like for you?
I feel like I had a pretty good transition from amateur to pro because, the last couple amateur bouts, I knew that's where I wanted to be. So, we started working on different things and kind of progressing towards that. I was like, I remember when I was an amateur, I saw Christy Martin fight, and as soon as I saw her on the big screen, I'm like, that's what I want to do. So I just always had it in my head that it was gonna go farther for me after my amateur career.
And your first professional fight, what's that like for you? Is it the same type of excitement you're getting from before? Are you used to it, or is there butterflies still going up to that first fight? What's that like?
I was definitely nervous because, no headgear, smaller gloves. But, I was really lucky because I had a really good amateur career, and, I fought over in Europe and a lot of different tournaments. So I had that experience with like the crowd and a lot of people, and, not always knowing everything. So you kind of have to be flexible and adaptable. But I remember my first fight very clearly, actually, and I was walking out. They messed up my ring walk sound, and I was like, "Come on," But I had to, again, I had to adapt and kind of like, okay, you still have to focus. And then I got in the ring, and the girl, hit me, and then I came back with like a right hand, and I hit her for the first time with no headgear, and I was like, wow, like I gotta take this girl out because I know how this feels on this end. It's also gonna be on my end, so. I think I got like a first round knockout or something, but, and then after that, it was just like, I want more. I want to do this more and more.
All right, I got to ask, what was supposed to be the walkout song versus what was the walkout song?
Okay, that I might not remember. That was like a long time ago. I'll have to think about it.
All right. In your first year pro, which was 2000, right?
Yeah.
You have 3 fights, and then in 2001, having 5 fights. The thing I really admire about your career is like, nowadays you always hear about people, both men and women, taking maybe 1 or 2 fights a year.
Yeah.
Throughout your career, you always had either 3, 4, or 5 fights a year consecutively.
Yeah.
I wanted to focus a little bit on the very beginning, though, because I want to talk about what that's like training-wise for you, 3, 4, like, like, as a boxer, what's that discussion like, trying to figure out your first fights or training-wise? What's that look like in the beginning for you?
I mean, I think it was a little bit different because, you know, female boxing was still really kind of starting to get going at that time. And, you know, there weren't a lot of fights, so you just kind of took what you can get. I think I fought in a world title fight, like my 5th fight or something. And that's just kind of how it was. Like if you got asked, you know, to fight, you took the fight because otherwise you didn't know. And, you know, like I said, I was eager. I wanted to do this for a living. So I kind of took anything that came to me.
What's, just as like a curiosity, what's a fight camp look like? Like, let's say you have a fight booked. How far out do you know in advance when your fight is? And then what's that training look like going up there?
It really depends. Like back then I had shorter training camps, but I was also like 20 something. Sure. Now because of my advanced age, I have, I like long training camps. So I kind of ease into it. And, you know, training in my 20s to training in my 40s is very, very different. I need more recovery now. I work with you know, a great strength trainer, strength and conditioning coach. And, you know, for me, like, I mostly do pads and sparring in my training. I don't do a lot of bag work anymore. So it's a little bit different.
We also feel like at that point, like, you know what works best for you versus like what you need to spend more time on versus what you don't really have to spend that much time on.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like we've always learned that we learn a lot from our losses, or we always hear that, right? You learn more from your losses than your wins. So I want to talk about kind of like your first loss, because you started, it was 3 straight wins, right? Mm-hmm. Christina Miller, Jamie Day, and then Kathy Boyle. Boyle. And so learning, and then you had Elizabeth Mueller, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about, because you start off, right, like winning, it's like, oh yeah, like, were you like, oh, this is solid, I'm pretty decent at this stuff. Yeah. And then encountering like your first loss, like what goes through your mind? Are you discouraged? Are you motivated? And kind of what's that like for you?
So that fight with Liz like changed my life completely, because I had seen, so I went to the World Championships in the amateurs. I think we were in Finland for that. And I actually saw Liz fight. And I had seen, you know, at that time, like you'd hear of, you know, Team USA, like there were, you know, Team Sweden, we competed against a lot. So you hear of all these girls. And like I said, I got to see Liz fight. And then when they were looking for an opponent, I was like, absolutely, I know I can beat her. And she's a great fighter, but I knew I could beat her. So, you know, we took the fight. Obviously, I was the kind of underdog coming in. And then the fight happened to be on ESPN. You know, Teddy Atlas is like watching, you know, announcing my fight, which I think I was like so starstruck when I saw him. But everybody thought I won the fight. And, you know, it was really, really disappointing. It was really hard because I knew I won the fight. ESPN thought I won the fight. But it got me here. So Jimmy saw me. We started communicating. You know, he brought me in as an opponent first, but he saw me fight. He's like, wow, this girl can really fight. She's really good. And then I got signed with Jimmy. So, you know, that was like the best thing that ever happened to me.
Jimmy Burchfield from CES, right?
Yep,
Locally?
yeah,
sure.
So, so he signed me, when was that, 2001, maybe?
Yeah, because you started 2000, right? So,
Yeah, so, yeah, still with him.
That's awesome. So learning from the loss and then moving forward, eventually getting. So what was like your lesson learned? Because one thing I'm curious about before we get there, because I know I'm going to go off track, but what was it? Because I know, like, being an athlete, boxing, football, baseball, you watch a lot of film. Yeah. Now at that point, was there a lot of film on some of the fighters you're fighting? Like, how do you just train for, like, just to enhance your skills to be ready for anything? What's that like? Yeah, like in the beginning, there was not a lot of film. You know, it's so easy now. Everybody's on Instagram, and you can find film really easy. But back then, it was really hard. So you kind of just had to train for anything, or you would, you know, like the matchmaker or promoter or trainer would be making phone calls. Have you seen this girl fight? What's she like? You know, that's really all you could kind of go by at that time. And it's interesting, like how, like that ESPN, would you say that's a turning point in the career for you? That first fight with Liz and then signing to Jimmy, was that like a big turning point for you, would you say, in your career? Or?
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, because at the time, women didn't really get signed with promoters. It was still really looked down on, and people didn't take female boxing seriously. But, you know, Jimmy always, you know, was an advocate for female boxing, and he always put females on his cards. And so for me to, you know, luck out and do really well in that fight and have him sign me, it kind of changed everything for me, because had I not been signed by him, I don't know how far my career would have went, because I was in Canada at the time. There wasn't a lot going on in boxing, so you know, I felt like I was a little bit stuck.
Sure. In 2004, you fight Eliza Olsen. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
For the International Women's Boxing Federation World Superlight. That's your first title fight?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what that lead up was like, and tell me a little bit about like that fight.
Yeah, that fight was crazy. And it's so crazy because Eliza and I had 2 fights together, and we did not like each other. And after that fight, we actually almost got in a fight.
Really?
in the dressing room. Well, she came after me. I was like, no. But no, it was awesome, because my coach Tiny Ritchie was still alive, and you know, he was such a big influence in my life, and just having him there and being able to work, you know, train me for that fight, and we worked so hard. And Eliza, you know, she had a really good reputation, and she was like probably one of the toughest females I ever fought. Her grandfather was a professional boxer, so you know, it was definitely in her blood and her family. But yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy fight. It was like a dirty fight. You know, there's some headbutting, and it was a rough one, but we came out on top. And you know, I felt so lucky and blessed that I had the opportunity.
That was it. That fight where you. Because I know it's happened a couple of times, but you broke your hand in one of the.
That was the second time I fought her.
Second time you fought her?
Yeah.
What's that like, fighting with a? Do you know the minute it happens, you're like, oh, something just happened? Like,
yeah, no, I knew. So it was. We fought at Foxwoods. It was the 3rd round. So, you know, I love Eliza. I've seen her since. We're cool.
Sure.
But she has a really hard hand. So I hit her so hard with a right hand, and like, she was one of those fighters, you could hit her with like a baseball bat and she was still coming. So I hit her with a right hand, and I knew right away. And then it was a 10-round fight, and I think I fought 7 rounds like with a jab, and I ended up getting a draw. Which was very disappointing. That I was in the hospital after, because they had to like cut my glove off. It was my hand was like this big. But you know, it was definitely disappointing. I think I might have taken a little bit of break. I had hand surgery after that fight.
So when you break your hand mid-fight, because it's happened multiple times, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like you have a game plan going into a fight, like you for the most part always.
Yeah.
How do you figure out to adapt? What goes through your mind mentally? It happens, you're just like, oh shit, like what do I do now? Like,
yeah.
Is it like figuring out the moment, then your corner helps you, or kind of what? Like, how does that work?
I mean, I think for me, I just kind of figured it out. Like, obviously, I told my corner, but you know, you either quit or you keep going. So for me, just like whatever I have to do to keep going and finish this fight is what I'm gonna do.
Where does that come from? Like that inner motivation? Is it sports? Is it your upbringing? Like, how do you get like that?
I don't know.
Can you
I think I'm
teach
just
it, or are you born with
crazy.
it?
I think I'm
crazy?
definitely, I think I'm just crazy. No, I think I was definitely born with it, you know, and you know, a little bit being brought up, kind of tough, you know, but I think it's just something that's like always been inside of me, and I still have it. I don't quit, so.
Can you teach that, or is it just, it has to be in somebody?
I think it has to be in somebody. I think you can bring it out of somebody. Like, you know, I do have boxers that I train that they have it, but they just don't quite know what to do with it yet. So I think you can bring it out, but I think, you know, it takes a special person to get in there, and you have to be a little tapped on here to get and want to do it and keep doing it, you know.
Yeah, I also think it takes a special person to know that in someone too. Are you saying like teach that to bring it out in someone? Because I feel like, I forget what it was. I remember talking with somebody, we were talking about how like everyone has like that type of energy, whether it be good or bad, even if it's bad, as long as you can figure out a way to like channel that, like whether it be in a sport or something, how that can change. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's talked a lot with like Tyson too, like Mike Tyson. They talk about Customato kind of channeling his energy into that and making him kind of what he did. But
with the hands, both times, I broke my hand. It was actually both in the third round. I think in the first couple of rounds after I broke it, I was only using my jab. I do remember like using my right hand in the fight, but just like, you know, what's this gonna look like? You know, in your head, you're always thinking like, first of all, I just keep going, but second of all, I'm like, is this it for me? Because, you know, hand injuries can, you know, end someone's career. So I think I always had that in the back of my head. And then even after I've had 2 hand surgeries. After that, I kind of always had it in the back of my head for the next couple of fights. So it's definitely something that kind of weighs on you.
what's crazy is like, it's not just, it's also a championship fight.
Yeah.
Like out of all fights, like that's the fight that it has to happen in.
Yep,
But,
yeah.
And then, so out of your championship fights, what are some of, if you had to like summarize, what are some of like the biggest lessons that you learned that made you successful winning? Because you have 4-time champ. So what are some of the lessons learning throughout that progress to be getting the fight, finishing the fight, that training camp? What's like what makes a champion, I guess, would be kind of how I would have to summarize it.
You know, I think for me, just like, I always worked really hard in the gym, and that, you know, that was a huge part of my success. You know, I wasn't always the most skilled or the most talented, but I think I had such a really high work ethic, and I had a lot of heart. You know, I didn't quit, I didn't give up. You know, of course you get tired in camp, and sometimes you don't feel like training and you're tired, but like I showed up every single day and tried to give it 1,000% every time.
Awesome. And so after the Melissa fight, so you end up in 2010, you fight Holly Holm, right? Mm-hmm. And then serious injury happens then.
Yeah.
I know it's difficult to talk about because it's a loss, obviously, right? It's always tough to talk about that. So, but kind of going through the Holly Holm fight and afterwards, like, it was spinal nerve injury that occurred.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about ending that fight, kind of what was going through your mind, and kind of like what that recovery was like for you right afterwards.
Yeah, that was like a really crazy time because I had my first child, my daughter, and then I had 2 fights. I think I was back in the ring in like 7 or 8 months. And then I had another tough fight against Jill Emery, who is like a great boxer. That was a really tough fight. And then we got the Holly Holm fight, and at the time she was like Amanda Serrano. You know, she was on top. Everybody wanted to fight her, and I was like so excited that I had that opportunity because I saw something that I thought she was beatable. You know, like great fighter, still a great fighter. And the training camp was so hard, and it was so intense. And I also had like a 1-year-old. So that was like kind of crazy. But when, you know, we got to the fight, I think we were in Albuquerque for like a week before the fight, and with my daughter and my husband, and you know, I felt great. I was so confident. My weight, I was actually really underweight for that fight. And then we never actually got to see her weigh in, which was kind of crazy.
I heard that's weird.
Yeah, it was really weird. And then they made us redo our hands when we were wrapping the hands. They didn't like how we wrapped the hands, which, like, I was training with Kurt Reeder at the time, who is an excellent hand wrapper. Like, he's incredible, one of the best. And then we weren't allowed to watch their hand wraps. Like, it was just like a lot of really weird things. And, you know, who knows what the outcome would have been regardless. But, I remember getting hit with, she's a lefty. I got hit with like a right hook and being like, all right, like this is okay. And then we worked a lot of body shots in camp because she was a lot taller than me. So I was going down for a right hand to the body, and she kind of like, I don't know, like she fell on me or something, or she leaned into me, and then I just completely went paralyzed. It was like the weirdest thing. Like I still like remember it really clearly, which is weird. I remember everything. I remember like in the hallway before the fight with Jimmy and my team and our ring walk song, and we were just like, everything was like super clear. And as an athlete, when you're that clear, you're gonna have a great performance. And I really, really felt like, you know, win or lose, I was just gonna have an incredible performance that was gonna take me to the next level. And then that happened. And it was crazy. It was like, it was really scary because I didn't know. Like at first, I thought it was like my shoulder, but then it was my neck. And I think I was in like physical therapy for like a few months after. I was like paralyzed for 2 weeks, like my face and my neck and my shoulder.
Like mentally, like is it like I can't wait to get back, I'm gonna come back, or is it like I don't know, kind of like what was going through your like mentally after that happens, and kind of even going through like PT? Are you thinking I'm coming back, or I don't know if it's gonna happen again?
At that time, I was like no, because I had a young child, and that like was my priority, you know, and I'm getting emotional. I was just, yeah, that was it for me. I'm like, you know what, like I just need to take care of my daughter, and this is scary, and I don't want this to happen again. But you know, I was still in the gym, I was still training people, so I could never really get away from it. I think if I didn't train people and do what I did, I think at that time I probably would have completely walked away because it scared me.
You didn't.
But I didn't,
came back,
like multiple times.
Smacking people around. So it was it 3 years?
Yeah,
right?
I think it was
Something
3
like
years.
that?
Yeah.
So you come back. I always find this interesting. Is training as a mom different from pre-mom in the sense of like, obviously the duties play a huge toll, right? Because you're there, you're in the gym, but I guess, does the edge change is what I'm trying to figure out? Like, I don't know, I feel like the older people get, even like as an athlete, like high school football to college football, the edge is kind of different, or like that fire burning. I don't know how to explain that.
No,
but
I know what you're talking about.
Is it different training as a mom versus not being a mom, or?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think, so I came back, I think I fought Domingo?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Olivio? Right?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
And,
Yep, 11/22/2013.
yeah, so we were, what was I doing? I think I was just gonna come back and do the one fight. I can't even remember. I started training with Steve Mays, who had been my cut man and a friend for a long time, for that fight. And we're like, oh, we'll just do one and done. And I think I just needed to prove to myself that I could do it again, because even though, you know, after Holly, I'm like, oh, I can't do this, I shouldn't do this. You know, people get in your head too, like, what are you doing? You're a mom, you should just do that. But I think I just had to prove to myself that I could do it, and I was hungry, and we had a great camp. And, you know, it was a tough fight. She was a very tough fighter, but, you know, we got through it, and then I thought I was satisfied with that. But then I came out of retirement again.
Do you ever like, I don't know, I was, as I was driving here, I was thinking about asking this. Do you ever just look back and realize like how much of a badass you like are? Like
No.
to do stuff like that, like that's some serious stuff to your entire career, the Holly Holm fight, coming back, still smacking people around and still doing it today. You ever like look back and think back, yeah, I am pretty badass?
Maybe not badass, but I think like I was telling somebody the other day, I'm like, the biggest compliment I ever got in my career, and these questions are just too much for me.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. Is my daughter is like, Mom, you're really inspiring, and that's like I think more inspiring, especially being 47 and still boxing, because you know if you really love something, if it's your passion, why give up on it if you can keep doing it, you know? And I think the sports have changed a lot. You see a lot of older fighters, you know, staying in the sport. So why not? Like, why not keep doing it? But maybe more inspiring than a badass.
Well, badass people can be inspiring, just
Yeah.
saying. Maybe I don't want to pick the right words all the time, but nonetheless. But we were talking off camera too, and I also said like, I just plainly, I just came out, I was like, I feel like retirement sucks, or like finishing a sport just sucks in general for me. I think, I feel like no one ever talks about it or prepares you for like, it's not like, because it's so like embedded in us, whether it's like in the gym or like I said, football, martial arts, boxing, whatever. Do you get like that feeling like when saying you're retiring, it's like, oh, but then you're always like in the gym again? Like, I do miss this. Like,
yeah.
What was that like for you?
It's always been like that for me. Like both times when I stopped, it was just like, I always had it in the back of my head. I don't think I ever really fully believed that I was retired. Like, I think way back in my head, I knew that I was going to come back at some point. And I will be retiring soon. I hope to have a couple more fights, and then I think, it's time. And I kind of joke like, oh, I'm going to throw on my boxing stuff out. I'm done when I'm done. But it actually scares the hell out of me. It's like, I'm not looking forward to that day.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's going to be hard.
I think part of it is, I don't know, as an athlete, it sounds weird, but I feel like we have like a fire that burns.
Yeah.
And until like it's all done, I feel like that's when they say, all right, it's done.
It's done, yeah.
But I feel like the minute there's still a little bit left in there, I'm like, oh man, I got to keep going until that fire is gone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like Brady played into his 40s. How come, people ever kept saying he can, but he was still playing at such a high level. I feel like if you can still perform at that level, then why quit?
Right, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, and I think, for me, I still love it. Like, I don't, like, every day that I get to train, I'm excited. I love it. I put the time and I put the work in. And it would be different if I was coming in here like, oh, I don't want to do this. I sparred 10 rounds this morning. I didn't have to. Sure. I did it because I wanted to, because I love to. And, being part of the gym and having all the athletes in here and the support, just makes it that much better. So, it's hard to give that up.
What has been some of the most important, because I'm a firm believer, and I feel like sports teaches us a lot of things that school can, or just life in general. What's some of the life lessons that you feel are most important to you that you learned through boxing?
First of all, just hard work. Like, hard work and consistency can get you anywhere. When I started boxing at 15, farm girl from Saskatchewan, I don't think anyone really believed in me, and I never gave up, and I just worked really, really hard. Like I said, I was never always the best or got it the quickest, but I always put the time in, and I was always in the gym, and I think, that's a huge lesson, and I try and teach my children that also, just keep grinding, keep doing it, keep showing up every day. It might not be the best day, but you're here, and I think that's really important. I don't know. I think I'm still learning a lot of lessons. As I get older, even just my coaching style. I'm starting. I think when I was younger, I was just had that little chip on my shoulder, and I would just I just want to beat everybody up and win everything. And now it's just I see the bigger picture, and it's just so for me and a lot of people in here. It's so much more than just a sport. It's a way of life. People work through a lot of things through boxing, physically, emotionally, and I think that's such a beautiful part of the sport, and I'm still learning a lot about that and just seeing it through my athletes.
And transitioning into a trainer and a business owner, is it difficult? It's nice. I feel like it's nice that the sport through an athlete perspective. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that probably helps about being a trainer and a coach, but. As an entrepreneur, what was that like for you, transitioning from athlete? Well, obviously you're still an athlete, but becoming a business owner, a female business owner, and everything like that. What's that like for you?
I wasn't competing when we opened the gym, but I think opening the gym kind of brought a little more fire back into me to compete because, we built such a beautiful community here of people, and they're all so supportive, and I'm like, I want to. I'm kind of fighting for these people. And a lot of our members are over the age of 40, and they're coming in and they're competing. We have a lot of master boxers here. So I think that kind of sparked a little fire with me. It's really freaking hard. It's hard managing everything, I'll be honest with you. Just with my kids and their sports and the gym and training fighters, I'm pulled in a lot of directions, but that's, I think, the thing that I'm most proud of because I'm doing it and I can do it and I keep doing it.
I was going to say, what's your favorite memory, either in sports or specifically boxing? What has been thus far? I mean, obviously it's probably more to come, but what has been your favorite memory so far in the sport?
Oh my God, there's so many.
Top 3.
So many. I mean, opening this place, because it was just, the way it all came about was just amazing. And, like I said, we built this community, and I still love coming here every day. Winning my first world title with Tiny. And I think right now I'm kind of like, it's really hard for me right now because I'm trying to get fights, and nothing's really come up for me at the moment. But I still really love it, and my body hurts. Like I'm getting older, I'm falling apart, but I think like now is such a beautiful moment for me because I'm showing up every day and I'm doing it, and I'm excited to see like what's coming next for me.
And you mentioned how like the gym came about. Can you tell me the story of how this gym came about and tell me a little bit about that?
So it started with tequila. We were at a gym, at another gym, and I had my daughter and my son, I think he was maybe like 2, and I was struggling, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna take a break. So I stopped coaching. I'm like, I'm just going to be a stay-at-home mom for a little while and see how that is. And then a bunch of us girls went out, girls that I used to train, and, we were having a good time. And I said, it'd be amazing if we started this like community gym that we all kind of brought up together. And then one of our friends who leased all the apartments here, she's like, oh my God, I have the perfect spot for you. So we came here and we saw it, and it was a complete mess. Like there were windows, there wasn't even like a roof or anything. And we're like, this is our spot. And everything just kind of worked out, and it was crazy. And we just celebrated 5 years.
Awesome, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So I got a couple fun questions, and then I want to end with kind of our general one that we always do. So I put in here a rapid round, kind of fast, quick questions. I think it's kind of fun. So I want to start off with we could do female and male, whatever you prefer.
Yeah.
But your Mount Rushmore of favorite fighters, or kind of who you think are the greats.
Oh my God, there's so many. I mean, I'm a huge Arturo Gatti fan.
Sure.
Always. Vinny Paz, Mickey Ward. Like I love the local guys. Oh man, Serrano, Katie Taylor, who, I had the pleasure of sparring with. I would say those are like my top right now.
You did a training camp with Vinny, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
What was that like, training?
Crazy. No, it was amazing because Vinny was 40 at the time, and again, at that time, people weren't boxing at that age, and he worked harder than the 20-year-olds in the gym. And I was always a hard worker, but he showed me what the next level was. And I forget the girl that I fought. I ended up stopping her. And it was just, I think it was Vinny's, I was the co-feature for Vinny's last fight. Mm-hmm. And just like, it was just magical training camp. There was so much hype because of Vinny, and he, I was kind of under his wing, and I just like, right then and there, I really went to the next level with him.
What's a, because I'm always curious, what's a fight camp look like? Like in terms of like the actual, like training for a fight? Is it like, do you have weightlifting days some days? Do you have specifically boxing days some days? What does that look like? Yeah,
like, so I usually box like 5 to 6 days a week. So I try and get like 3 days of sparring, 2 to 3 days. I like more sparring, I think for me, it's just better mentally. And then I do like 3 days of mitts, usually with my coach. We usually do like 10 to 12 rounds of pads, a lot of jump rope, running. I do a lot of sprints. And then I work with my strength and conditioning coach like twice a week. Cool. So it's a lot. Usually I'm training like twice a day.
And then I want to give a shout out too to the gym. So it's also, you do lessons here, training here, everything. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about what goes on in the gym?
Yeah, so we do a lot of boxing classes here, and it's really for all levels. And that was like the biggest thing about opening this place is, you're not always gonna find the warmest welcoming at a boxing gym. It can be very intimidating. So we just wanted to open a place that was kind of welcome to everybody. We have, young kids. I think our oldest person that trains here, who I train, Adrienne, I think she's 73, and she's a badass.
That's
so you want to
awesome.
see a badass? She's amazing.
Inspiring.
Yeah, she's inspiring. But we just, we want everyone to kind of see what it's about and have fun and train. And then when we opened, we didn't think we'd be training boxers, but all of a sudden we have all these people. I want to fight. I want to fight. I want to fight. So we started doing that. We also do fitness classes, so strength and conditioning. But it's fun. We have a good time.
Cool. We're gonna put me through some training too, see if I got anything.
Absolutely.
But we always like to end with one of my favorite questions is if you had, whether it be an athlete, someone just in general in life, if you could give them a piece of advice on how they can make forward progress in life, in a sport, kind of what would your piece of advice be for them?
Obviously, like the hard work and the dedication. You have to be dedicated to the sport if you want to go far. And I think another thing is just like ask a lot of questions. I think in the beginning for me, like I was a little bit shy and I didn't want to always ask or push for what I really wanted. And I found as I got older and I started really kind of going out there and getting things for myself, it took my career to another place.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Jamie, I want to thank you for being a guest on our season 2.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of fun. And then we'll see if we can do some fun stuff and show people what it's like to train in boxing.
All right.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you.